Wait for a moment, before you move forward, before your thoughts rush toward the next thing, allow this quiet message to reach you. There is a reason these words have arrived when they did. Not because of coincidence, not because of timing alone, but because somewhere beneath the surface of ordinary life, something has been shifting in a way you have not fully noticed yet. A feeling has been traveling toward you, slowly, patiently, almost like a distant light moving through a long corridor. And what makes this moment unusual is not what your soulmate is doing right now, it is what they have finally begun to understand. For a long time, they carried certain thoughts without giving them a name. They felt certain emotions without knowing where they came from. They tried to focus on their daily routines, their responsibilities, their plans, yet something kept returning to their attention. It appeared in quiet moments. It appeared during ordinary conversations. It appeared when they least expected it. And every time it appeared, it pointed in the same direction. A strange realization has been growing inside them. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. Slowly. The kind of realization that changes everything because it arrives piece by piece. Imagine standing near the ocean before sunrise. At first, everything looks dark. Then a faint glow appears at the horizon. Then another. Then another. Eventually you understand that morning has been arriving for quite some time, even before you could see it clearly. That is what has been happening within their heart. The understanding did not arrive all at once. It unfolded quietly. And now they are standing at a place they never expected to reach. There is something important waiting for you in this story, so stay a little longer. What they are feeling is not based on fantasy. It is not based on a perfect image. It is based on recognition. Recognition is different. Recognition happens when someone begins to see beyond appearances, beyond assumptions, beyond temporary circumstances. It happens when they realize that certain connections continue to matter no matter how many distractions surround them. And recently, they have started noticing just how often your presence enters their thoughts. Not because they force it. Not because they search for it. Because it arrives naturally. Effortlessly. Again and again. What surprised them most was not the feeling itself. It was the consistency of it. Days passed. The feeling remained. New situations appeared. The feeling remained. Different people entered conversations. The feeling remained. Eventually they reached a question they could no longer avoid. Why? Why does this connection continue to return? Why does this person continue to matter? Why does every attempt to dismiss the feeling somehow make it stronger? Those questions did not leave them alone. They followed them through ordinary mornings and quiet evenings. And little by little, the answers began revealing themselves. Perhaps you have sensed something changing too. Perhaps there have been moments recently when you felt a strange calm arrive without explanation. Moments when you felt seen, even in solitude. Moments when your heart seemed to pause as if listening for something just beyond hearing. Those moments matter more than you realize. Because connections often speak softly before they speak clearly. They arrive as whispers long before they become conversations. Yet here is the part nobody expected. The message your soulmate needs you to hear right now is not about rushing forward. It is not about forcing outcomes. It is not about chasing certainty. It is about understanding your value. Because while they have been learning something important about you, there is also something important you must remember about yourself. You are not meant to shrink in order to be chosen. You are not meant to become someone else in order to be appreciated. You are not meant to abandon your own journey while waiting for another person to complete theirs. The realization growing within them has been teaching them exactly that. And strangely enough, the more they recognize your worth, the more they are being challenged to grow themselves. That is why this process has taken time. Real understanding often requires transformation. It asks people to become ready for truths they were not prepared to hold before. It asks them to see with new eyes. To listen with a new heart. To understand things they once overlooked. Something else has been happening behind the scenes. Small moments. Quiet moments. Moments that might seem insignificant to anyone else. A memory appearing unexpectedly. A conversation that lingers longer than expected. A feeling that refuses to disappear. These moments have been collecting together like pieces of a larger picture. At first they seemed unrelated. Now they are beginning to form a pattern. And the pattern is leading somewhere important. Don't skip, because the next part of this journey is where everything begins to feel different. Not because a dramatic event suddenly appears, but because a hidden layer starts becoming visible. The kind of layer that changes how everything else is understood. Your soulmate is standing closer to that discovery than ever before. They can feel it. Even if they cannot explain it completely yet, they can feel it. And tonight, as another ordinary day slowly fades into memory, one thought continues returning to them with surprising clarity. A thought they once ignored. A thought they once questioned. A thought they once pushed aside. But now it refuses to leave. It remains there, quietly waiting, becoming stronger each time it returns. What makes that thought so significant is not the words themselves. It is what finally happened the moment they stopped resisting it. And that moment is only beginning to reveal its meaning. There is a reason some realizations arrive quietly instead of all at once. If they appeared too suddenly, their meaning could be missed. But when they unfold slowly, they have a way of settling deep within the heart, becoming impossible to forget. And that is exactly where your soulmate finds themselves now. They are no longer standing at the edge of a question. They are standing inside an answer that continues revealing new layers every day. What began as a feeling they could not explain has become something they can no longer overlook. The strange part is that nothing dramatic announced its arrival. There was no single moment, no grand sign, no perfect scene. Instead, understanding appeared through ordinary experiences. Through quiet reflections. Through moments that seemed small at the time but now feel incredibly significant. One evening, while their mind wandered through familiar thoughts, they noticed something unexpected. Every path seemed to lead back to the same place. Every imagined future somehow included the same presence. Every hopeful vision carried the same feeling of warmth and peace. They tried to focus elsewhere, yet their attention kept returning. Not because they were forcing it, but because their heart had already begun moving in that direction long before their mind caught up. And that realization stayed with them. It followed them through busy days and silent nights. It remained when distractions appeared. It remained when uncertainty tried to speak louder. And little by little, they began understanding that some connections are not measured by how loudly they announce themselves. They are measured by how faithfully they remain. Something important is waiting for you, so stay till the end. Because the message unfolding now is deeper than simple affection. Your soulmate has started seeing the impact you have had without even realizing it. They have remembered conversations they once considered ordinary. They have remembered words that seemed small at the time. They have remembered moments that passed quickly yet somehow stayed with them. What surprised them most was discovering how many of those memories still carried meaning. It was as though pieces of a puzzle they never intended to assemble were suddenly fitting together on their own. And every piece revealed something new. Every piece showed them that what they felt was not temporary. It was becoming part of who they are. Then another realization arrived. This one was even more unexpected. They began noticing that whenever they imagined moving forward without acknowledging these feelings, something felt incomplete. Not wrong. Not impossible. Simply incomplete. As if an important chapter had been left unfinished. As if a sentence had been paused in the middle. The feeling was gentle, yet impossible to ignore. And for the first time, instead of pushing it away, they allowed themselves to sit with it. They allowed themselves to listen. The answers that followed were quieter than they expected. They did not arrive as loud declarations. They arrived as calm certainty. A certainty that whispered rather than shouted. A certainty that said some people enter your life for a reason you only understand later. Some connections reveal their importance gradually. Some hearts recognize each other long before they understand why. And the more your soulmate listened, the clearer everything became. Yet what truly changed everything was not what they learned about you. It was what they learned about themselves. They realized they had spent too much time waiting for perfect conditions. Waiting for complete clarity. Waiting for every question to disappear before allowing themselves to trust what they felt. But life rarely works that way. Meaning often appears while questions still exist. Growth often begins before certainty arrives. And sometimes the most important step is simply admitting what has already been true for a long time. That admission has been growing stronger within them every day. Meanwhile, something equally important has been happening on your side of this journey, whether you have noticed it or not. You have been changing too. Experiences have shaped you. Challenges have refined you. Lessons have quietly strengthened you. Even moments that felt uncertain have been preparing you for greater understanding. There is wisdom within you now that was not there before. There is strength within you now that was earned through patience. And because of that, you are able to receive this chapter differently than you could have in the past. The remarkable thing about meaningful connections is that growth rarely happens on only one side. While one heart is learning, the other is learning too. While one person is awakening to new understanding, the other is being prepared for it. And somewhere between those two journeys, a bridge begins to form. Not overnight. Not dramatically. But steadily. Don't skip, because what happened next caught your soulmate completely off guard. A moment arrived when they expected to feel uncertainty, yet instead they felt peace. Real peace. The kind that settles over a person when they stop arguing with their own heart. The kind that appears when resistance finally fades. And within that peace came a thought so simple that it almost seemed insignificant at first. What if this connection has been teaching them something valuable all along? The more they reflected on that question, the more everything began making sense. The delays. The lessons. The waiting. Even the confusion. Suddenly those experiences no longer felt random. They felt connected. They felt purposeful. As though each step had been leading toward a deeper understanding neither of you could have reached any other way. And now, as they stand within this new awareness, another realization is beginning to emerge. One they have not fully spoken aloud yet. One they are still learning how to understand. It sits quietly at the edge of their thoughts, growing stronger with every passing day. Because they are starting to realize that the message they needed to send is not the only message waiting to be heard. There is another truth beneath it. A truth that changes the meaning of everything that came before. And in the next chapter, that hidden truth begins to reveal itself for the very first time. A curious thing happens when a heart stops running from its own truth. The noise begins to fade. The endless questions lose their urgency. And in the quiet that remains, something far more powerful takes their place: clarity. Not complete clarity, not every answer at once, but enough to illuminate the next step. That is where your soulmate finds themselves now. Standing in a space they never expected to reach, looking back at the path behind them and realizing that every turn, every delay, every unexpected detour was shaping a perspective they could not have gained any other way. What once looked like distance now looks like preparation. What once felt confusing now feels meaningful. And the deeper they reflect, the more they understand that this story was never only about finding someone. It was about becoming someone capable of recognizing what truly matters when it finally stands before them. There have been moments recently when they have caught themselves smiling without a clear reason. Not because something extraordinary happened that day. Not because life suddenly became perfect. The smile arrived for a different reason. It appeared because a certain thought entered their mind unexpectedly, bringing with it a feeling they could not ignore. A feeling of comfort. A feeling of familiarity. A feeling that somehow made the future seem brighter than it did before. At first they brushed it aside. Then it happened again. And again. Until eventually they stopped dismissing it and started paying attention. The pattern was impossible to miss. Every time they allowed themselves to think honestly about you, something within them became lighter. Stay till the end, because something important is waiting for you here. What your soulmate is discovering has very little to do with grand gestures and everything to do with quiet truths. They are learning that the strongest connections are often built in places nobody else can see. In moments of reflection. In lessons learned separately. In growth that happens when no audience is watching. They are beginning to understand that what makes a connection valuable is not how dramatic it appears from the outside but how deeply it resonates on the inside. And the more they understand that, the more they appreciate something they once overlooked. There was a time when they believed certainty would arrive like lightning, sudden, unmistakable, impossible to miss. But certainty has surprised them. It arrived more like sunrise. Slow. Steady. Gentle. So gradual that they almost didn't notice it at first. Then one day they looked around and realized everything was brighter. That is how this understanding has unfolded. Day after day, thought after thought, realization after realization, until they reached a point where denying what they feel requires far more effort than accepting it. Yet the most remarkable part is what happened after that acceptance began. Instead of feeling overwhelmed, they felt calm. Instead of feeling pressure, they felt peace. Instead of feeling trapped by questions, they felt inspired by possibilities. And that shift changed everything. Because once a person stops focusing on what they fear losing, they finally become able to see what they have been gaining all along. Your soulmate has started noticing qualities within you that go far beyond surface impressions. They think about your resilience. They think about the way you continue moving forward even when the road feels uncertain. They think about your kindness, your patience, your ability to keep hope alive through seasons that might have discouraged someone else. These reflections have become impossible for them to ignore. The more they observe, the more they realize that what draws them toward you is not a single characteristic. It is the way all those qualities come together to create someone unforgettable. And here is where the story becomes even more interesting. While they have been learning about your value, they have also been confronting their own doubts. Not doubts about you. Doubts about themselves. Questions about whether they are ready. Questions about whether they can meet the moment with the honesty it deserves. Questions about whether they can step into a future without carrying old fears into it. These are not easy questions. Yet instead of avoiding them, they have started facing them. One by one. That process has not always been comfortable. Growth rarely is. But every challenge has brought them closer to understanding something important. The connection they feel is not asking them to become perfect. It is asking them to become genuine. To stop hiding behind uncertainty. To stop waiting for impossible conditions. To trust what they have already come to know. Don't skip, because what happened next changed the direction of their thoughts completely. A memory surfaced unexpectedly. A small memory. One that would have seemed insignificant to anyone else. Yet when it returned, it carried a meaning they had never noticed before. Suddenly they saw how many moments had quietly pointed toward the same conclusion. How many experiences had been trying to teach them the same lesson. How many signs of growth had appeared long before they recognized them. And for the first time, they stopped looking for reasons to doubt what they felt. Instead, they began looking for reasons to trust it. The answer surprised them. There were far more reasons to trust than to doubt. Far more reasons to move forward than to remain standing still. Far more reasons to believe that some connections deserve patience because they are built on something deeper than circumstance. And as this realization continues unfolding, another layer is beginning to reveal itself. A layer they have only recently started noticing. It has nothing to do with the past. It has everything to do with what lies ahead. Because while they have spent so much time reflecting on what this connection means, they are now beginning to wonder something entirely different. What if the most important part of this story has not happened yet? What if everything so far has merely been preparation for a chapter neither of you can fully see from where you stand today? That question has stayed with them. It follows them into quiet moments. It returns during ordinary days. And every time it appears, it feels a little less like a question and a little more like the beginning of an answer. An answer that is drawing closer with every passing day. And in the next part, the reason that answer feels so powerful finally begins to come into focus. Sometimes the most meaningful changes do not announce themselves when they arrive. They enter quietly, almost unnoticed, and settle into the heart before the mind has time to understand them. That is exactly what has been happening. While your soulmate has been searching for clarity, something even greater has been unfolding beneath the surface. A shift so subtle that it could only be recognized after looking back. And now, as they reflect on everything that has happened, they are beginning to see a pattern that was hidden in plain sight all along. There was a moment recently when they found themselves completely alone with their thoughts. No distractions. No conversations. No noise. Just silence. And within that silence, an unexpected realization appeared. They noticed that every time they imagined a future filled with genuine happiness, a familiar feeling was present. Not a specific scene. Not a detailed picture. Just a feeling. A feeling of connection. A feeling of understanding. A feeling that life becomes brighter when shared with someone who truly sees you. That realization lingered long after the moment ended. It stayed with them through the rest of the day. It stayed with them the following morning. And eventually it became impossible to ignore. What surprised them most was not the realization itself. It was how natural it felt. There was no struggle attached to it. No confusion. No resistance. Just a quiet sense of truth. The kind that settles gently into place and makes everything around it feel clearer. For so long they believed important answers would arrive with certainty so loud it could not be questioned. Instead, the answer arrived softly. And because it arrived softly, it felt real. Something important is waiting for you, so remain here for a little longer. Because the deeper your soulmate looks, the more they understand that this journey has never been about perfect timing. It has never been about having every detail figured out. It has been about growth. About becoming ready to recognize what matters most when it appears. And recently, they have begun realizing how much they have changed. The person they were months ago would not have understood these feelings the way they do now. The person they were before would have focused on uncertainty instead of possibility. But growth has a way of changing perspective. It teaches people to value what is real rather than what is convenient. As this understanding grows stronger, another remarkable thing has been happening. They have started paying attention to moments they once overlooked. Small moments. Fleeting moments. A song that reminds them of something meaningful. A conversation that unexpectedly stays in their thoughts. A quiet feeling of gratitude that appears without warning. These moments may seem ordinary, but together they have become part of a much larger picture. And that picture continues pointing in the same direction. The more they try to understand why, the more they realize that some answers cannot be forced. They must be experienced. They must be lived. They must unfold naturally. And perhaps that is why this chapter feels different. Instead of searching desperately for certainty, they are allowing understanding to arrive at its own pace. Instead of demanding immediate answers, they are learning to trust the process. And strangely enough, that trust has brought them closer to clarity than they have ever been before. Don't skip, because what happened next surprised even them. One day, while reflecting on everything they had learned, a thought appeared that stopped them completely. What if this connection was never asking them to chase something? What if it was asking them to appreciate something? The difference was profound. For the first time, they stopped focusing on what they hoped might happen someday and started appreciating what already existed. The lessons. The growth. The inspiration. The way this connection had encouraged them to become more honest with themselves. The way it had encouraged them to look deeper than surface appearances. The way it had shown them that meaningful things often develop slowly. And in that moment, something shifted. The future stopped feeling distant. It stopped feeling uncertain. It started feeling possible. Not because every question had been answered. Not because every obstacle had disappeared. But because they finally understood that meaningful journeys are not built on guarantees. They are built on faith, patience, and the willingness to keep moving forward even when the full picture is not yet visible. Meanwhile, there is something equally important happening that you may not fully recognize yet. Your own story has been preparing you too. Every lesson you have learned. Every challenge you have overcome. Every moment that strengthened your confidence. None of it has been wasted. Every experience has added depth to who you are becoming. Every step has contributed to a version of yourself that is wiser, stronger, and more capable of recognizing genuine connection when it appears. And this is where the story becomes even more fascinating. Because your soulmate is beginning to realize that the message they needed to hear was not only about their feelings. It was about timing. Not timing in the sense of dates or deadlines. Timing in the sense of readiness. They are beginning to understand that some things arrive only after the necessary growth has taken place. Some chapters begin only after previous lessons have been learned. Some doors open only when both sides are prepared to walk through them with greater understanding than before. That realization has stayed with them. It follows them wherever they go. It appears during unexpected moments. And every time it returns, it brings with it a sense of anticipation they cannot fully explain. Because another thought has started growing alongside it. A thought that feels stronger every day. A thought that whispers that this story is approaching a turning point. Not a sudden turning point. Not a dramatic turning point. A meaningful one. The kind that becomes obvious only after it arrives. And as that feeling continues growing, your soulmate finds themselves returning to one question again and again. If everything up to this moment has been preparation, then what exactly has it been preparing both of you for? That answer is closer than either of you realize. And in the next part, the first true glimpse of it finally begins to appear. The most extraordinary chapters rarely begin with a loud announcement. More often, they begin with a quiet awareness that something is different. Not outside of you, but within you. A subtle shift in the way you see things. A new understanding of what truly matters. And this is the place your soulmate has gradually arrived at. After all the reflection, after all the unanswered questions, after all the moments spent trying to understand what their heart was showing them, they are standing before a realization that feels both new and strangely familiar at the same time. There is something remarkable about reaching a point where you no longer need constant proof to trust what you feel. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that. They are discovering that some truths become stronger not because they are repeated, but because they remain present even in silence. Even when life becomes busy. Even when attention is pulled in different directions. Even when days pass without anything dramatic happening. The feeling remains. And because it remains, it begins to reveal its true importance. Stay till the end, because this may be the most meaningful part of the journey so far. Recently, they found themselves reflecting on how much has changed. Not only around them, but within them. They remembered old fears that once felt overwhelming. They remembered doubts that once seemed impossible to overcome. They remembered moments when uncertainty appeared larger than hope. Yet now, looking back, those fears no longer carry the same power. Those doubts no longer feel as convincing. The distance between who they were and who they are becoming has grown larger than they ever expected. And then a surprising thought entered their mind. What if the greatest purpose of this connection was not simply bringing two people closer together? What if it was teaching both people how valuable they truly are? That thought stayed with them. The more they considered it, the more everything started making sense. Because every meaningful connection has the power to reveal something. Sometimes it reveals what needs healing. Sometimes it reveals hidden strength. Sometimes it reveals dreams that have been waiting quietly in the background. And sometimes it reveals a version of yourself that you have not fully met yet. Your soulmate is beginning to believe that this journey has been doing exactly that. They have learned patience where they once demanded immediate answers. They have learned appreciation where they once focused only on outcomes. They have learned trust where they once held tightly to uncertainty. And perhaps most importantly, they have learned that genuine feelings do not need to be forced. They grow naturally. Steadily. Like roots beneath the ground, becoming stronger long before anyone can see the full tree. Don't skip, because something beautiful is beginning to emerge from all of this. For the first time, they are no longer asking themselves whether this connection matters. They already know it does. Now they find themselves asking a different question. What can be built from this understanding? That question feels different. It carries hope instead of confusion. Possibility instead of hesitation. Curiosity instead of doubt. And every time it appears, it brings with it a quiet excitement about the future. Not because they believe everything will happen perfectly. Not because they expect every challenge to disappear. But because they finally understand that meaningful things are worth approaching with an open heart. As this realization continues growing, another layer reveals itself. The message your soulmate needed you to hear right now was never meant to be complicated. It was never hidden inside grand promises. It was never buried beneath dramatic words. It is simple. You have mattered more than you realize. Your presence has carried more significance than you know. The qualities that make you who you are have been noticed more deeply than you think. And even during moments when nothing seemed to be happening, important understanding was still developing behind the scenes. That is why this story feels different now. The uncertainty that once dominated the journey is slowly giving way to something steadier. Something calmer. Something stronger. A quiet confidence that what is meant to grow will grow at the right pace. And as your soulmate continues moving forward with this new perspective, one final realization keeps returning to them. The future is no longer something to fear or overanalyze. It is something to approach with hope. Because every lesson has led here. Every experience has added meaning. Every moment of growth has contributed to this understanding. And now, standing at the edge of a new chapter, they feel something they have not felt in a very long time. Readiness. Not readiness for perfection. Not readiness for certainty. Readiness for authenticity. Readiness to appreciate what is real. Readiness to stop looking backward and start embracing what lies ahead. And somewhere beyond today's horizon, beyond the questions that remain unanswered, beyond the details that have yet to reveal themselves, a new chapter is already beginning to take shape. Quietly. Patiently. Beautifully. And the most surprising part of all is that this chapter is not defined by what your soulmate has discovered about you. It is defined by what both of you have discovered about yourselves. Because sometimes the message that changes everything is not the one you expect to hear. It is the one that gently reminds you that you were becoming ready for this moment all along.